it's Liz Yuille from Old Stables Crafts. Thank you very much for joining me again today. Today I have a video that has been requested. I shared this card with you last week. This uses the Today's Tiles, can't say it, but that's what it uses, stamp set and bundle. This was for the spot challenge, and it was a colour challenge using Rich Raspberry, Pumpkin Pie and Pretty Peacock, and this was my card. Now I am doing something slightly different today. To get the pumpkin pie, I actually drew that in by hand using the pumpkin pie blend. I am not going to be adding the extra colour today, but I am going to be doing some heat embossing instead. So the card that I'm going to be making is one that's similar to this, just in a different colourway. So I've used the same dies. I've got the Happy Birthday, which is from the Well Spoken. I think it's the Well Spoken dies. It is Well Written dies, which go with the Well Said stamp set. They used to be bundled, they're not anymore. They stop being a bundle when the catalogue changes. Generally speaking, not always, but generally. So we've got the Birthday and the Happy. These are die cut with early espresso with the adhesive sheet on the back. So it's easy to stack. And there are, I think from memory, 3 early espresso layers there. And then some of our ordinary copper foil as a sort of background and mat. And I die cut this from the mat. So there's a hole in the back of the mat, but nobody's going to know but us. So I'm changing it up a little. I'm going Night of Navy and Balmy Blue. So I've got my Balmy Blue ready in my Stamparatus. Now I have marked where my Balmy Blue needs to be. So I'm using this straight line here and the line here. And I've lined up my first stamp so that it will stamp in that space. Now I am going to trim this piece down. This is 5 5/8 by 3 7/8. I am going to trim it down, so this isn't actually symmetrical because I know I'm going to trim it down. Otherwise I would be having an issue with it not being symmetrical, because I can't be doing with that. So I've got Night of Navy ink, which I am going to add to my stamp. Now my stamp is pink because I used Rich Raspberry in my original, and because Rich Raspberry has red dye in it, it has stained, clean dirt, not dirty dirt, it has stained my dye. All of our inks that have red in them will stain photopolymer, but actually it's quite useful because I can now see where I have misinked or not inked enough. Now I may need to stamp this twice, but I'm going to start with once and see what happens. So I'm just making sure I give good pressure to my stamp and lift it up. Yes, so I need to do more over this side. It is the side that's nearest to the hinge, so that is the hardest to put pressure on because it is nearest to the hinge. So this end, which is away from the hinge, is obviously, you know, flapping in the breeze, where this has got some support. So I need to put more welly this end than that end. So lots of welly this end, and then just smooth out, and fingers crossed, there we go. So that's beautifully stamped. So we now need to move this down because this is going to be using the hinge technique. So I'm coming down 2 hinges because this is 2 inches wide and each of the hinges are 1 inch wide. So if I come down 2 hinges, I come down to the right space for the stamp to do the repeat stamping. Now I'm just going to make sure I move these magnets down. One of the things to bear in mind is that if you're using a juicy ink pad, as I am, you can end up with the stamp pulling the card up. Now obviously here it's easier because I can hold it down, but when you're doing the top, let's see if I can just add a bit more there. I will re-ink as well, but Yeah, so you see, I just need to make sure I do lots of welly at that side. But yes, do just be aware that your card could lift up with your stamp, particularly when you're doing the first piece where you can't get your hand in to hold everything in place. But for here, just make sure everything's lined up still. There can be a little bit of twist on the hinge. Obviously, the fewer things holding it in place, the more movement there could be in the door. And as you can see, I'm concentrating on this end and less so on the other end. So there we are, that looks good. And I also like to check that everything is still in place. Now, this end has now had a reasonable amount of time to dry, so I'm quite happy to move my magnets up. Then I'm going to move my hinge down, but now we are at the point where there is movement because we've only got 3 hinges holding it in place. So you do need to be a little careful about stamping, particularly when we get to the next stage where we want to line things up. It's not quite such an issue here, although it would be nice if we got everything straight. But when we get to doing the next piece, you do want to make sure that you don't allow this wibble. So I'm going to err on the side of caution by going up rather than down. And just see if you can find a straight edge. I've got one here. That's the best thing to do. And again, lots of welly on the hinge side and less over here. Now, you could move everything across, but the further away you get from the hinge, the more movement there is, because you've got your point that things move. So if you've got an angle, it will be a very narrow angle to begin with, but when you come further away, that angle will be a wider fault. Hope that makes sense. I know what I mean. And again, I'm going to re-ink because I have been doing double on all of it, so I need to do double all the way down. And this time I definitely need to make sure that I only have pale blue showing through my stamp, because otherwise it's going to be wibbly and wobbly. Right, there we go. Oh, no, need to get that middle bit now. That bit there needs welly. That's not too bad. Okay, so need to clean this off. I don't need the navy ink anymore. So grab my clean dirt, not dirty dirt, stained chamois. Clean that off, and as you can see, it's getting pinker by the moment. Strangely, I think our navy does have some red in there. And then that comes off. And we move the door back up, or the flap back up, pop this away and get the next one out. So it goes in that way round, and we pull out this one. And now I'm going to be doing heat embossing. So we do need to make sure that everything is reasonably dry. And one way to make sure of that is to get your embossing buddy, talcum powder, corn flour. These will all be fine as an alternative. Just pop them in a little bag. Something that's going to let a little bit of the powder out. And then I'm going to move this down a wee bit because I need to be able to get over it. I'm going to lay this down, and because we've got the embossing buddy powder down, it actually works quite well to make sure that we can move the stamp around without it sticking, because as you know, photopolymer has a habit of sticking to things. So I find if I line up here and then just check that we're reasonably okay over here, that by doing those two I don't have to worry too much about the middle, because if the two sides are okay, the middle's almost bound to be. And then again, lift up your stamp And I do make sure that it is actually in place at that point. And again, pop my stamp case underneath and grab my Versamark and ink up. Now I'm going to do all of the Versamark inking and then I'm going to heat emboss. And what I did with the first one, which I used white embossing powder on, this time I'm going to use silver, but what I did was I did it once, so I heat embossed once and then I went back, put my piece of card back in and heat embossed again, so you get a really nice raised finish. But I am going to do quite a lot of this. Fortunately, I have done quite a lot of the other die cutting. That needs to be done because we're already 10 minutes into the video and I've hardly started. So let's move this down. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to bash you. You maybe now see why I didn't do a video of colouring in the pumpkin pie on my first version, because that would have taken quite a while. Right, so I'm going to move this down a bit more. Now what I can't do now is move this up to there because that's got wet ink on it. So I need to just have the courage of my convictions and just go for it. Now what I can do is hold down the background, and I've stuck the card blank, the mat, to my paper with just a tiny bit of seal. What I don't think I've done is put enough embossing buddy on this end of the card though. So we may have some fun. Right, so this time that needs to come off, that needs to come off. No, I think we might be all right. So I'm going to make sure I don't go over there because that's where we've already got in Versamark. And move this down, ink up, and line up. This is much easier to see than the full stamp, so the first stamp, so particularly because I've done Night of Navy, it's quite easy to see the dark colour through the clear stamp. But obviously, you know, if you're doing colour on colour, then that can be a bit of a challenge. Right, okay. So that's that done. I'm going to pop that back up the top, and then this I'm very carefully going to just twist off because, as I say, I've stuck this down with just a tiny bit of seal and it's just there. So this we now need to dabble in some embossing powder. And I've got my silver embossing powder ready to go. So again, being careful not to touch the centre of the card if I can avoid it. I'm just going to get all of the embossing powder to one side and tap it off. Yes, I think I may not have got embossing buddy down the middle, but we'll see. And again, yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Let's give it a good tap. And I may give it an even better tap. Excuse me one moment while I find somewhere to hold on to it and give a reasonable flick and drop it on the floor. There is a bit in the middle that is quite powdery. I think we're going to end up with just, that may well be covered, so it may not be a problem. Right, okay, let me grab my chopping board, cheese board, and pop this onto that. Grab my heat tool. While I'm doing this, do remember to subscribe. There's a subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner, and if you're in the UK and need any Stampin' Up products, I would be thrilled if you would order through me. It really does make it easier for me to bring you these videos. So Normally I would keep this in place with the fold back clip, but obviously it's all needs to be embossed, so that doesn't really work. Going quite nicely. It may not actually need a second layer. We'll see how it goes. I'm just going to move my take the pick tool. Just pick that up and see if I've missed anywhere. Possibly there. No, I think we're good to go. I don't think we're going to need a second inking. That is going to be fine. So let me show you what it looks like. Isn't that just lovely? I mean, just think of all the colour combinations you could do, and obviously you don't need to do heat embossing. Heat embossing is, you know, just another step in the whole process. So this I need to cut down. Let me get rid of my Stamparatus, pop that back on its little shelf. So let me bring in my trimmer. Get my Versamark out of the way. And so I want to trim this down, and I just need to sort of look at it for a while and see where I'm going to trim. I'm probably actually going to trim both sides. Let's have a look. So if that's square, yeah, it's probably about both sides, because I want it to end up 3 3/4 inches wide, that sort of thing. So that's that one, and then this one. And how are we doing time-wise? Good grief, 18 minutes, and all I've done so far is stamping. Fortunately, the rest of this goes quite quickly. And this I want down to 5.5, and I'm not too worried if it's not totally symmetrical top and bottom, as in this is heavier than this. That's not a problem for me. Then I want a Night of Navy matte, and I've already die cut my label and my back piece. Now this uses the second from largest layering square, and it fits perfectly, but you could obviously just trim it with your trimmer, so it's not a tricky thing to do. And then I'm just going to add some ink. Just want a little bit on these corner pieces, just so that those hold in place. Don't want so much that it's going to squish out the sides. And there we go. And the last corner. And then just a scribble down the middle, so that we've got something to hold the middle in place. And then I tend to sort of line up the sides and then, or 2 corners, and then just pop it in place. And because we've got liquid glue, it's got a little bit of wiggle room just in case it's not completely square. So I don't know why I'm putting that away, because I need to pop that on the back of my mat. Now what I haven't sorted out is my card base, so I'll see if I've got another balmy blue. I say another, a balmy blue. Can't have another if you haven't got one in the first place. Let me have a look and see if I have a balmy blue already cut. No, that's seafoam. Okay, I might actually, white would probably work. So let's go white. Oops, knock my lights, why don't I? So this is just a half sheet cut long and thin and scored in the middle. Grab my bone folder to reinforce the score line and pop this on the card. So again, some more liquid adhesive. I really don't use very much. You don't need to use very much. And then I'm going to put the slightly wider piece at the bottom of my card. Putting the heavier bit at the bottom just feels more right from a design point of view, or less wrong depending on how you look at it. So that's our basic card. Then this needs to go onto some dimensionals, and grab my sticky scissors, and we can use some of these edge pieces which work just as well. Flip that over. And the last one. And it's not taking weight, so I'm not going to put one in the middle. Is that all of them? Yes, it is. And then this I'm going to add so that it's square left to right and reasonably square up and down. So I need to go slightly further to the left. A little bit more. That's about it. Make sure we're square and then press. And then, say, I've used the Happy Birthday and I've die cut in silver and in Night of Navy. And I've got the adhesive strip on the back, but I've got a little trick with the adhesive strip on the bottom of the birthday, because the birthday is too long for the die cut, for the square. So I'm going to cheat a little, because I don't really want a sticky backed birthday hanging off the edge of the layer, this piece. So that's that in place. And this is 3 layers of Night of Navy, 1 layer of silver foil, die cut with the adhesive strip already on the back. So these are the 12x6 adhesive sheets, which are a godsend when you're doing small die cuts. Right, so this is fine up here. That's perfectly fine. I'm probably going to push it over slightly because I want the birthday to be hanging off the left-hand edge. So what I'm going to do is take my sticky scissors and just come in underneath the release paper and just snip at the B. So that then comes off and is self-adhesive. The B isn't. So that can then hang over the edge while the rest of it remains sticky. So that I can press down. I can release all of the paper off this one, and then our card is done. Now these are actually birthday cards for some friends of ours. We have a couple of male friends whose birthday is on the same day. So they generally get the same cards, just in a different design each year. So there we go. One and the other one. Just by changing the colours, changing what you do, you get a completely different look. And here again, this one I did the diamond for the middle, but this is all using the same stamp set, just in a different way. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that makes this stamp set a little more user-friendly. It's got some lovely sentiments in it. So from that point of view, it's also a good stamp set. Some slightly unusual ones. So we've got Namaste, I'm blessed to have you in my life, wishing you peace and happiness, everything will be okay, thanks for being there when I needed you most, and just wanted to say hello. So some really nice sentiments, slightly unusual, and some really nice birthday cards. So thank you very much for joining me today. As I say, if you don't already subscribe, if you want to click the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Questions or comments, leave below the description bar. There's a link in the description bar to my website, which will have some more photographs of these items. Not this one, because this has already been shared, but of these two, before I pop them in the post and send them off to our friends. So thank you very much indeed, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye!